video is going to be an additional example for how to do the questions for 1-1 key features of functions. So I'm just going to run through some of these just to give you an additional problem to look at. If you want to, you may use this for number 8 on the worksheet that was uploaded. That's the one where you're supposed to create your own. I did label some of the ordered pairs of some of the important things that are going on, and we're going to be using that as we go through. So the first thing we have up here is domain. Remember, domain is your left x to your right x. So you want to see how far to the left you go on the x-axis and how far to the right you go on the x-axis. The leftmost point that we have has an x value of -6, and that is a closed dot. So closed dots mean brackets. So my domain, the first number, is going to be a -6 with a bracket. The farthest to the right that we go is a +5. That +5 has an open dot, so that is going to be a parenthesis. So your domain is from -6 to 5. The range is your bottom y to your top y. So I want to look at how far down we go to how far up we go. Again, we're looking at y values for range. We looked at x values for domain, y values for range. The lowest that we go on the y-axis is -4. And those are closed dots, so that is going to get a bracket. If you would happen to have one open dot and one closed dot, the closed dot would overrule the open dot and you would put the bracket there. The highest up that we go is up here, and that is a +4. That is a closed dot as well. The only way you're going to have an open dot is if you see something out here at 5-1 where it is hollow, where it looks like it's hollow in the middle. So everything else is closed here. So 4 is also going to be a bracket. Your x-intercepts, that's where your graph crosses the x-axis. There are 3 places where we cross the x-axis: -4, -1, and 4. So -4, -1, and 4. We're just going to list those out. We're not going to write those as ordered pairs or anything. There's just 3 separate x values. If you were to make them ordered pairs, you would put a 0 in the y position because all x-intercepts have y values of 0. X-intercepts, you may have 1, you may have 2, you may have 3, 4. There's no limit on the number of x-intercepts you can have. However, for y-intercepts, you are limited to 1. There can only ever be 1 y-intercept. And in this particular question, the y-intercept occurs down here. And we use the y value, which is -4. If you watch the previous videos that I did with examples from this section, this is where the first video would stop. So the first video covers domain, range, x-intercepts, and y-intercept. The second video then is going to cover what I'm going to go over next: increasing, decreasing, positive, negative, and then finally rate of change. I am going to be using some highlights here so you can see the different parts that we're talking about. But for all of these, so for all 4 of these, we are going to be using x values only. So you're saying from what x to what x. No y's here, only going to be using x values. So if we look at the first one, increasing. Increasing is where your line is going to have a positive slope. We have a positive slope here because it's going up there, and we have a positive slope there. So to name the actual values there, I'm looking at the x's. So for this piece on the left, I start at an x value of -6, and I end at an x value of -2. There is an additional place where we're increasing, and that's going to be the second piece here. I am starting at an x value of 0, and I am stopping at an x value of 5. So again, increasing, that's where your line is going up. So those match up with the yellow. Decreasing is where your line is going down. There's one section here in the middle where our line is going down. The x value that it starts at is -2, and the x value that it stops decreasing at is 0. And for this particular question, there is only one place where it is decreasing. So increasing, decreasing, increasing has a positive slope, it's going up. Decreasing has a negative slope, it's going down. Now I'm going to get rid of these colors so I can use 2 different colors for positive and negative so we don't get confused about what is here. So positive. Positive is when you are above the x-axis. So my x-axis runs horizontally through the middle of the graph. So I have this one little peak here that is above the x-axis. And then I have this tiny piece on the end that is above the x-axis. So anything that is in the upper region above the x-axis, that is going to count for positive. And again, we're naming x values. So for this green piece, I'm starting at an x value of -4, and I'm going the whole way until an x value of -1. Then I name the other little piece where I'm positive. That starts at +4 and ends at +5. So those are the places where the graph is above the x-axis. Now, if it's not below the x-axis, or if it's not above the x-axis, it's most likely going to be below the x-axis. The only way it would be neither is if you actually trace the x-axis, which doesn't actually occur with these questions. So I have this section here and this section here, which are both below the x-axis. And once again, I need to name x values. So I'm starting at an x value of -6. And I'm done being negative at the x value of -4. So from -6 to -4, I am negative. I'm below the x-axis. We are also below the x-axis, starting at -1 and going the whole way over to +4. So again, naming x values for those. And that one is going to be in the pink color. So that's increasing, decreasing, positive, negative. The only thing left to do now is figure out your rate of change. Your rate of change is merely your slope. So you're finding your slope from -2 to -4. These are both x values. So you want to think of them as x1 and x2. You want to find the spot on the graph where the x is -2. Well, if I go to -2, the graph doesn't actually exist on the axis. I have to follow it up, and I'm going to put a dot up here because -2, -4 is the actual point that's on the graph. Now I got to go to 4. And if I go over to 4 on the x-axis, you can see that is actually part of the graph. So I would put a dot there at 4. I'm going to connect those 2 dots and find their slope. To do this, I'm going to count my rise and my run, because remember, rate of change or slope is rise over run. So if I start at my left dot, I'm actually going to be counting down to meet up with this second dot. I'm counting down 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be a -4 on top, and then counting to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have -4/6. This does reduce because you can divide both the top and the bottom by 2. So it reduces to -2/3. So my slope is going to be -2/3. I hope that this was helpful for you going through and completing this question. And you may look back over any of the previous videos to give you any additional help with this section. And just like with everything else, please reach out to me if you do have any questions.